Our norms are a promise that we will not allow this department to be used as a political weapon.
After thanking the Department of Justice's 115,000 staff for their work, Merrick Garland, in a speech September 12, turned to the topic implicitly of Donald Trump.
Our norms are a promise that we will not allow this nation to become a country where law enforcement is treated as an apparatus of politics.
Mr. Garland's speech initially drew on history, and he detailed how his own career at Justice had begun 40 years ago in the wake of Watergate, as the department tried to restore public confidence.
The result was a slim, paper-bound volume entitled Principles of Federal Prosecution, published in 1980.
Focusing on said document's core principles, Mr. Garland honed in on its directive about which factors an attorney for the government may not consider, which includes political association, activities, or beliefs. Then this.
This provision of the principles ends with an admonition, quote, "Federal prosecutors and agents may never make a decision regarding an investigation or prosecution for the purpose of affecting any election or the purpose of giving an advantage or disadvantage to any candidate or political party."
Much of Mr. Garland's speech was a standard defense of his department, and any Attorney General might praise the rule of law in similar terms. But on the point about politics and norms, Mr. Garland ignores his own role as the first AG to prosecute a former president, and the timeline of his actions is instructive.
You better run, cops!
Mr. Trump's conduct on January 6, 2021 was disgraceful, and while the Justice Department ferociously pursued those who stormed the Capitol, it was years before the former president was charged. It was April 2022 when the New York Times reported that President Biden believed that Donald Trump was a threat to democracy and should be prosecuted. The Times added that the president hadn't told the AG this directly, but has said privately that he wanted Mr. Garland to act less like a ponderous judge and more like a prosecutor who's willing to take decisive action over the events of January 6. 7.5 months later,
I am tonight announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.
3 days after Mr. Trump's announcement,
today, I signed an order appointing Jack Smith to serve as special counsel.
Mr. Smith unveiled 2 indictments of Mr. Trump, one in June and one in August.
Today, an indictment was unsealed, charging Donald J. Trump.
Never in history had a former president been prosecuted by the Justice Department, even leaving aside that Mr. Trump at the time was also the leading 2024 candidate for the opposing party. And given Attorney General Merrick Garland reports to Joe Biden, Americans were right to see this as a Garland-Biden indictment.
Mr. President, are you concerned about the decision in light of the Trump indictment?
If everybody can
President Biden, have you spoken to Attorney General Merrick Garland yet?
I have not spoken to him at all. I'm not going to speak to him. I have no comment on what happened.
The effect of the indictments was to draw focus on Mr. Trump during the GOP primaries, which in part enabled him to win the nomination. They also invited an historic legal challenge to the Supreme Court on presidential immunity that Mr. Smith and the AG lost.
There is not one rule for friends and another for foes. One rule for Democrats and another for Republicans.
Even if he and Mr. Smith believe that Mr. Trump broke the law, a prosecutor must also exercise prudential judgment. That goes especially for an Attorney General who's supposed to think about the larger consequences of such momentous charges.
Having now served as Attorney General for the past 3.5 years, I continue to believe deeply that our norms matter, now more than ever, to our department and to our democracy.
Mr. Garland can lecture about norms all he wants, but he is the man who, under political pressure, broke a norm that had lasted for more than 200 years.